It's all right.
We're just talking about
we're venting.
chaos. Yeah. About chaos,
Yeah.
the chaos of life,
I've never had a drink on a podcast, but since you
Oh.
said to,
cheers.
here I am. Cheers.
All right.
Rosé season is always in style.
Exactly. I always say cocktails are welcome. Swearing happens. Nothing is, it's not required, but it makes things a little bit more fun. And I mean, just bouncing off of what Ian was talking about and going right into our conversation with you, because I've been waiting to talk to you. We've had some life stuff happening that's kept us from having this conversation. So, and I think like what Ian was talking about, hearing of, some situations with friends and family and your fur babies, when life happens, that's not so great, it makes you really reevaluate what you're doing in life and who you're spending time with and the choices you're making, which leads me right into what you have going on, like doing addiction. And I want to know a little bit more about you too. You're an organizational therapist. Is that
psychologist?
Okay, you're a psychologist. Okay.
Yeah, some would say therapist, but no.
We got to get it right.
I do coaching with executives and teams, but no, I'm not a therapist. I'm org psychologist, really studying human beings in the workplace and how to help people not only be on purpose and be effective, but be happy and joyful and enriched and get along.
Right. So how did you get into this whole doing addiction? Because I honestly, we were just talking about this a little bit ago. Like, I feel like the way that we were raised was if you're just sitting around doing nothing, then you're wasting your life away. You have to be doing something, always. And it's hard to not be constantly doing something, to force yourself to sit down. But I think that there's more to this than just that. So you want to share with us a little bit about how you got into it?
Yeah. So I think for the most part, I've probably always had a propensity for doing. My personality style is about action and momentum and energy and vitality and positivity. And so I think mentally, I believe I can do anything. Physically, I have a lot of vitality. And then I think just where probably I got trained from both my parents, who I would also say are doing addicts, and the cultures and contexts that I lived in, I was really reinforced for my ability to get shit done.
Right.
And to, put on a face that says, it's never too much. I'll sleep when I'm dead.
Right.
All those little things we tell ourselves to keep us in any kind of addiction, really.
Right.
Yeah.
So
but my mother is she's 77, works absolute full-time, cannot be still. And so maybe we'll get to what I realized in my own journey of recovery is that I really didn't want to be that still. I didn't like how I felt being still. I didn't really like what came up. And so I think that was a turning point for me to stick with my recovery, because when I got comfortable with that, I really liked what I found.
Yeah.
But I think until you get a taste of the other side, the lighter, and, get out of the dark and get into the light, it does feel very unfamiliar and scary for a lot of people.
Yeah. Especially when you get stuck. I mean, like when you're a mom, or you just get stuck in doing things at your job, and you just get going and you just kind of get stuck in a rut. And sometimes it's just easier just to do what you're doing than to not do it, and then when someone points it out to you, you're kind of like, oh, yeah, I guess he could get his own glass of water. Why am I doing it? Because you just get stuck in that moment, coming from a mom's perspective,
Yes.
And
I just had that unpacking for my son, and he probably could have packed for himself to go to his grandfather's for a few days, but I packed him. And yeah, there's something to that.
My youngest actually got mad at me because he is 8 going on 9, really 70, 75. He's just like one of those old souls. And he's like, I just really didn't like the fact that you packed for me to go to Michigan this summer. I would like to pack for myself next time. But I looked at him and I said, just so you know, if you pack for yourself, you're responsible for having everything you need, and then letting that go, and putting that in his hands. That's the control part of doing things too, is hard for 100%. Me. Yeah.
100%. Yeah. In my TED talk, it's called Authentic Inaction, Undoing the Doing in a Do Crazy World. The world would rather us, get up and make something of ourselves, as you opened with, and be be in contribution, and contribution looks like action. And no one really asked me along the way if I wanted to do it. I don't know that I even asked myself that often. Thankfully, I think for many years I was doing enough that fulfilled me, but then that balance of like doing authentic things and doing inauthentic things started to shift.
Right.
And I moved more into the kind of inauthentic action, and that didn't feel good for me. I felt really out of alignment. I became physically ill.
Okay.
I had a stutter that I developed, and I had a tremor, like I couldn't hold my hand still.
Oh, wow.
And they thought I had MS, and it was just stress. I had completely overridden my adrenal system, and I didn't know any other way at that point. But I do think there is a moment when you ask yourself, is who I am aligned with what I do? And if not, is that okay?
Right.
Yeah.
So did you walk away from like a big corporate job? I mean, where you were working with groups of people, and then you went out on your own and you're a coach and you got certifications, and so tell us a little bit about that, because that feels scary to me. Like, I think
Yeah.
Ian and I have always kind of gone a little bit off on our own little beaten path, yeah, like in not really what the mold or the box, growing up told us to do. But I always remember feeling a lot of resistance doing that, and then slipping into, in and out of like, what should I be doing? And, oh,
Yeah.
everyone wants me to do this. Everyone wants me to go to college. Everyone wants me to get a corporate job. But no, I don't. I want to be an artistic person. This is where I want to be, and then it's like you fight yourself, right? Oh, I got to turn off my email. Sorry about that. And it's chaos. But like, I've been fighting myself this whole time. And now all of a sudden, at my ripe old age of mid 40s, I'm finally doing something that I want to do. Partly thanks to Ian. And it's like, yeah. So how do we unpack all that?
Yeah. How do we undo the doing? You just nailed it. How do we do that? How do we start to kind of unravel and then ravel it back up? Because just so we're clear, because anyone who knows me is, going to listen, like, I don't sit around and do nothing.
Right. I was going to
That's
say.
not what, yeah, exactly. That's not what I stand for. I really, though, 90% of the time am saying yes because out of choice, rather than just habit or obligation, or frankly, just being afraid of what's on the other side of no, because I never said it. I prided myself on being the girl that got shit done and gotten a lot of shit done. And wow, you traveled there and you have that and you did that. So in terms of the decision I made to leave my corporate identity, my corporate life, everything I'd known that had completely reinforced my doing addiction, but wasn't their fault. I don't blame that at all. I think you can absolutely thrive in corporate and not fall into an addictive state. For me, I lost my way in that.
Okay.
And so I kind of always knew I'd go out on my own, because org psychologists in general, many of us start our own sort of coaching and consulting practices. And so that wasn't necessarily the big decision for me. The timing was a big deal. I was 45.
Oh,
and
the magic number.
That's right. Along those lines as well, I started to lose my eyesight. So that sucked. That's when these came around. But I think not lose my eyesight, right? Just old age. Yeah. Aging. Right. I shouldn't even say I'm not old. Aging. Right. But I kind of always knew I'd leave. When did I finally decide to leave? When I started to not like what I did. And that isn't who I am either. When I started to feel out of control, and I wasn't sleeping, I was not enriched. The world felt chaotic. It felt cold. My soul I was so exhausted most days. My bones literally ached. I wasn't present with the people I loved. I was impatient. I didn't like my boss. And I couldn't and I'd always, bosses come and go, good ones and bad ones. And I couldn't get over her, right? Like, I was like, oh, she's just ridiculous. So I just wasn't in a good place. And so I decided, okay, now's the time. I had just spent 5 years overseas. And I think that had sort of created such another set of beautiful experiences that for another 5 years, yes, I was doing addict, but I was more balanced. I was, so much holiday when you live in Europe.
Yeah.
They don't work all weekends and into the night. And I was traveling a lot, and I was traveling with my kids. And so, it wasn't so bad. But then when I came back from Europe, I really hit a wall and just
Okay.
decided, if not now, when? If not me, then who? And I want to be happy again. I want to, I get teary-eyed thinking about it. I want to love what I do. I want to stand in contribution, not obligation. And so I finally left, and, thankfully I had a really good kind of referral pipeline. A lot of my clients brought me in. And then when they left the company that I was at, they brought me in to, launch their new teams and coach their
Right.
leaders. And so I was really blessed with a lot of people that, supported me. But I will say I worked 60 hours and now I work 20. And that's probably the biggest distinction of my life today. The biggest difference is that I am not on the hook to anyone but myself and, my higher purpose more than like 20 hours a week. I just know that that's my limit.
That's awesome. I feel like Ian has something to say.
Yeah, I've seen him. He's like,
I
wait,
can
what?
see he's like,
Yeah.
wait.
Well, no, I find this so interesting, and I can relate to so much of it. And I'm just curious if there, because it sounds like a lot of those feelings were building up for a while internally, but was there an exact moment that just something just kind of clicked in your head, or you just kind of had a snapping moment where you're just like, I'm done with this corporate lifestyle? Like, was there a certain situation that happened that you said, that's the final straw? Or
Mhm.
Speaking of fur babies, we might have a little chaos because
No, you're
Amazon
good.
guy's dropping off a box. So we'll
Oh.
just let him bark. He's not that big.
No, that's good. That's totally fine.
I love that question, Ian. And I'm sure there was. Oh, heaven.
That's a mighty dog, a tiny dog with a mighty soul.
He's 17 pounds. He sounds like a lot bigger, doesn't he?
just excited they think they're getting a new toy?
That's okay. I can cut all
Can you
this
hear me?
out.
Back off. So I love the question. Was there a moment? I'm almost certain there was. It probably wasn't very pretty.
It's always that case.
Yeah, my guess is it was probably, on the I-80 driving from Sacramento to the Bay Area. And I just felt like I'm seeing myself now, like almost road ragey, right? Like nothing made sense. Like everything stopped making sense. Like, why would people do this 4 hours a day? Like, why are all these people here? I'd be on the 280 going from like San Francisco to San Jose, and that whole Silicon Valley, whatever.com or universe.
Yeah.
And they're just sitting there at 7 p.m. and all I'm looking at is headlights. And I just started to think like I teach people how to live in purpose and like be passionate and enriched and soulful and alive. And here I am wanting to like run into someone,
Right. Rear end them.
right. Yeah. And, was I doing good stuff? Sure. But that stopped really. It was like, it doesn't even matter. I knew I was at my breaking point, and I had this health scare and realized, wow, you're really breaking yourself down, and health means something. So I just think eventually I was like, you are not living authentically.
Yes.
You're out of alignment. And you don't even, I was kind of like, how could you dare do what you do and be this out of alignment?
Yeah. What's interesting is I went to my holistic doctor today, and he was like, I know, I just started going to him. I mean, it's only been in the last few years I've actually been paying attention to self-help and awakening and taking time for me, because really my whole life was centered around my kids and my husband, and starting a podcast and getting into voiceover and doing the things that light me up from the inside out and don't define me. It's defining me by me, not by everybody else around me. But I remember seeing my holistic doctor today, and you mentioned adrenal glands, right? And I just want to go back to that, because health is so important. You don't realize these little tiny like things that are just chipping away at your health. And he's like, I'm working on your adrenal glands. Have you been waking up in the middle of the night? I'm like, yes, I have. I have been waking up right. Yes. Yeah. And he's like, are you stressed out? I'm like, I am stressed. I just launched a business. I'm racking up credit cards. I'm waiting for, money's bleeding out. It's not coming in, and I feel kind of stuck right now. And your patience starts to wane, and you get woken up in the middle of the night. And I know that you'd said that like you didn't sleep very well. So it's like all that just kind of takes away from, living your authentic self. And yeah, so 100%. I don't know.
And I have the second TED Talk. I'm not pitching it yet because I don't know if I want to talk about insomnia for the next 5 years. Like I talk about doing addiction, which I'm still enjoying. But yeah, it's called Confessions of an Insomniac. I was on Ambien for 20 years. I couldn't fall. I'd forgotten how to fall asleep on my own. So I think like 5 years ago, I just went cold turkey. And by the way, I worked for a biotech company, and we were purchased or acquired by a Swiss company. And so for 2 years before I moved to Switzerland, I was on a flight every 6 weeks, as were all my colleagues. And we would literally be in business class handing out Ambience or Tylenol PMs. I mean, it was so, here you go, glass of wine. Okay, we're 3 hours in, night, night, see you on the other side, you know? And so it was so widely accepted and condoned. And again, not anyone's fault. This is not to say that that is, you know, some systemic abusive thing, but it just became so the norm that I think in the midst of it, not I think, I know in the midst of it, I didn't even need to try that hard to justify what was going on, including not being able to sit and have an enjoyable dinner with my kids without picking up my phone and checking email, right? Like these small things. By the way, I was raised by a workaholic who is still a workaholic, and I suffered greatly because of it. I told myself I'd never be that kind of mother, you know, and
that speaks so, Ian, you want to interject something? Cause I feel like we're in it.
I'm
adding it.
I'm enjoying all of this. I can, like I said before, I can just relate to so much of it, but no, I just find it so interesting, and I love hearing about these moments, and they sound so intense, but I think the bigger picture, like they're almost like revelations sometimes when you just you figure stuff out about yourself or about the world around you, and I just really interested in hearing all about this.
There was I was in the car, you know, kind of flipping through, and one of my stations is a Christian station anyway, and I stopped for a second and said, the hard moments in your life are not random or meaningless, they're part of your purpose. And, you know, in this context, you know, and God's purpose for you, but just in general, like they shape you. Exactly. They are revelations, Ian. I felt like I was really on one hand of it. And when I finally quit, my first year, I went to like 10 retreats because I just didn't know how to slow down in my own home, in my own car, in my own family system, right? I really had to relearn how to be still. And I spent a lot of time at a lot of retreat centers. And I remember saying, God, this shouldn't have been so hard. And there were moments when I was like, why'd you stay so long? Or why did you do this? Or more than that, why were you so complicit being a leader who portrayed success as constantly doing? And I was starting to think about all the people that I had impacted. And my daughter is looking very much like a doing addict, you know, 4th generation. My son, opposite. He's bewildering to me. He's like, whatever, you know, he's so going and like, yeah, he's 17. So maybe there's some of that there, but nonetheless, doesn't have the addiction like me. But, you know, I just think a revelation for me, the difference between like a crisis and a revelation is like, no, like this was all part of your journey. And maybe that's, you know, partly like why I speak about it. Like if I can have one person listening who is able to say like, oh, wait, this isn't okay. Actually, what this system or organization or relationship or project or job is asking of me is actually not right.
Yeah. It doesn't feel good, right?
That's right. It's not healthy. It's not even required. We over engineer and over effort so many things that like would be just as wonderful with half the effort. Half the time.
How do we know if we're a doer? Ian, did I steal your question? I mean, like how, like, as I'm thinking, I'm a doer. I mean, hands down, I'm probably a doer. Because I feel like I'm going to self-diagnose myself. I feel like I might be a doer. Like, what are some, you know, personality attributes?
I mean, like, do you like raise your hand in a work meeting and say yes to a project you actually don't want to do? Do you like host Christmas every year and you actually hate it? Do you say yes to like get up and meet a girlfriend for an 8 a.m. walk when actually you could sleep till 10, you know, and that's what you want to do. So there is this like habit of saying yes when you should say no, not checking in with yourself. And what I want to offer for those who struggle with saying no, because that's a lot of people struggle with saying no for all different reasons.
Totally.
Mine was a bit of like fear of missing out. I don't, you know, everything, all that sounds so good and fun. Why would I say no to good things? You know, so that's one of my stories. But I think the other story is like, I didn't realize because I'm a pretty independent, empowered woman. I've always seen myself that way. And I think showed up that way. And my doing life had me, I didn't have it. And I totally became disempowered and I became scattered instead of focused, right? And like tired instead of vitalized. And so I just think I started to see like over time, the damage it had done.
Mhm.
And, thankfully there is the coming back from it. But, certainly there were moments I was like, can I really undo this doing addiction or not? And I can, I'm really hopeful for you, but there are different reasons for doing. So there's kind of like 5 main types of doers that I've named. One is the controlling doer. You mentioned that.
Yeah.
Why don't I just do it? I'm quicker. I'll just get it done. I can't wait for you. Right. Kind of like that's what drives it. Then you have the doer who is like achievement oriented. I am what I do. My next accolade, my next check mark, my next affirmation of who I am is in what I do. I need to achieve and be seen as that, right? There's a real identity around that. Avoiding doer, kind of like, I'll just keep doing because I don't want to be still. I don't want to sit in the bigger questions. I don't want to tackle the bigger issues. So I'll just stay busy. Then there is the supporting doer. I'll do because I'm really good at doing for other people and been acknowledged for that. Right. And so I'll just keep doing that's affirming who I am and my identity. And if I do for you, you'll love me. Right. So there's a real motivation there. And then the last one is the 1, 2, 3, 4 perfecting doer. Right. Let me do it because I can do it better than you. So let me just get it done and, I'll over engineer it and over effort it and overdo it, but at least it'll be done perfect and you won't do it that way. So I'll do it. So, those are kind of 5 main kind of like archetypes of the doing addict. I find myself in multiple, if not all of them at times.
Yeah. I was going to say,
Jocelyn,
can
do
you
you
be,
do you find yourself in any of those categories?
oh yeah, I see little pieces of me in each one,
Okay.
probably, depending on like where I'm at in my life and my mood, maybe. Are there people that are not doers? Because you mentioned your son, I mean, I'm not saying that he's not a doer, he's not gonna do something, but like,
No,
I
he's
mean,
not.
I mean, there's some people that just are so relaxed and laid back and they're not, they
They
have
just don't
no,
have this angst of like,
yeah,
and they're not like they're fine letting other people do things.
yeah.
They're fine like setting boundaries. They're fine being bored.
Yeah.
They're fine being known for one thing, not 10